Township of Howell Planning Board meeting Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 6th, 2023, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger. Second, on January 6th, 2023, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 6, 2023, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Members of the public will have a chance to ask questions and comment on applications once the chairman opens the hearing up to members of the public. If you wish to ask questions or comments on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature and we will bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability. You will be sworn in and you will need to provide your name and address. For anyone calling in, you can press *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to mute or unmute yourself. This meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Cristiano,
Present.
Mr. Greenfield,
Here.
Mr. Husser,
Here.
Mr. Seaman,
Here.
Ms. Talente, here, Mr. Tannenhouse,
Here.
Councilman Gager,
Here.
Matthew Kyle's been excused, Mr. Mercer,
Here.
and Chairman Bavai.
Here.
You have a quorum, and tonight we have Austin Muller sitting in for Ron Cachero until Ron gets here. He'll be a little late.
Okay, cool.
Hello.
Okay,
Hi, Austin.
so let's rise for the pledge of the flag and a moment of silence for our troops serving abroad and at home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. Okay, so I think we got some minutes tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have minutes from the regular meeting, November 3rd, 2022. Eligible voters are Mr. Cristiano, Mr. Greenfield, Mr. Huzar, Mrs. Talente. Did I say that right, Meg? Yeah, she didn't hear me. Mr. Tannenhouse and myself.
I
Can I have
did,
a
Paul. You're good.
Cool.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
yes.
Mr. Tannenhouse,
Yes.
and Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved.
All right, thank you. And we have the minutes from the reorganization and the regular meeting from January 5th, 2023. Eligible voters are Greenfield, Huzar, Seaman, Talente, Tannenhouse, Gager. Mr. Kyle is not here. No, Mr. Kyle's here.
No, he's not here.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mercer and myself.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Either myself or Meg.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
yes.
Mr. Tannenhouse,
Yes.
Councilman Gager,
Yes,
Mr. Mercer,
Yes.
and Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries. Minutes are approved.
Okay. Any correspondence or vouchers?
I have no vouchers. Correspondence, I did send the new members an email about their mandatory training. And I'm happy to report that all 3 new members of the planning board have already signed up for their training class. There is no advanced class for the regular members. It's just the mandatory training class. So the rest of you get a break.
Cool.
The training is all virtual, so that's all we need to do. And then I don't really have correspondence, but do you want to deal with Monmouth Commerce now or wait until you get into applications?
I'd say we'll wait till applications. 'Cause we
Okay,
gotta figure out what we're gonna do there. Yeah.
perfect.
All right, we
Then
have
that's all the correspondence I have.
awesome. Okay, we have a resolution. Case number SP 1041A, Smith Family Properties. It's a resolution granting a 1-year extension of time. Eligible voters, Cristiano, Greenfield, Huzar, Talante, Tannenhouse, and myself. Could I have a motion?
I'll make motion to grant extension.
second,
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
yes,
Mr. Tannenhouse.
Yes.
And Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
All right. Okay, we have a submission waiver. Case number SP 1078A, New Horizon Properties LLC.
And I don't see the attorney for that application. So we might have to skip him for a minute. Unless, if you're in the audience, please raise your hand and I can bring you into the meeting.
I mean, I know there are engineers on. I'm not sure if he had intended to go through the waivers.
Okay, is that Stu?
Yes.
Okay, I could bring him in just to. And I know the applicant is on. For some reason, Stu is not coming over. I keep trying to bring him into the meeting, but he's not,
All right, well, you know what? We'll move on. You can wait till the end, I guess.
okay.
So, all right. We'll move on to case number SP 1100, Monmouth Commerce Center LLC.
I have Adam Fiella.
Good evening, everyone. Adam Fiella from Sills, Cummins and Gross on behalf of Monmouth Commerce Center LLC.
Good evening.
So I received Eileen's email earlier today. Doesn't sound like a special meeting is possible with schedules. Is that correct, Eileen?
Yeah, right now Jen has no availability the month of February. Laura can do the 9th and so can Shari, but Ron only has February 13th and 27th. And those are zoning board dates, so We can't do two meetings at the same time.
Of course not.
So,
Unfortunately, March 16th doesn't work for our traffic engineer.
okay,
It sounds like we might be going to April.
I have April 13th or 20th. They're back-to-back meetings in that
So
month.
our planner is not available on the 13th. Our traffic engineer is, and we have both of them available on the 20th. And I'm assuming we're not going to be able to get both dates. Does it make more sense to just get the 20th so we have everybody available?
Yes.
So then April 20th, and we will grant an extension of the municipal land use law deadline by which the board needs to act through the 21st.
Thank you.
Do you need something in writing also, Eileen, or is this statement enough?
That statement's actually enough. Thank you.
Great.
Eileen, I just heard from Ken Pape. He's trying to get in to do the submission waivers.
Okay,
So he can't, he's struggling to get in. I don't know why, but
does he want to call in?
I don't know. You want me to call him? You want to take 2 seconds and let me call him?
Yeah, go
Sure,
ahead.
because we still have to announce that this application's being carried, so we have a few minutes.
Want to announce it now?
Yes, please.
All right. So the application of case number SP 1100 of Monmouth Commerce will be carried to the board's, that's a regular meeting, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. The board's regular meeting on April 20th. There'll be no more notice to property owners. This is your notice, and I believe that's all I have to say, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that will be a virtual meeting. so-
Yes, virtual as well, the same way you would log in.
And same time, it starts at 7, right?
Yes,
Seven-
it does.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
Take
good
care.
night.
Have a good evening.
Eileen, Ken said Jared Pape is trying to get in.
Okay,
Do we see him?
no,
No,
Awesome. Is Stu, can you try to maybe move Stu in again?
sure.
I tried to text Stu.
Wait, someone's hands up. Hold on.
Might be Stu, because he's not even. yeah,
It is
it's-
Stu. His hands
Yep.
up.
yes, do.
I mean, we probably can.
I'm here.
Hey, Stu.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
This. Better.
Are we still waiting on Jared Pape?
I mean,
Yeah, and
I don't know
I
if you need if Laura's comfortable, whatever, you guys decide.
Yeah, as I say, usually we just go through the checklist items, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
You just
wanna
need to
get
swear me in.
All right. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
All right, so, right, this is, yeah, we can start if you're ready.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, I'll just kind of head it up. We have a reviewed letter dated January 16th, 2023. This is an amended site plan application. The site is actually under construction, and the applicant is merely seeking to change tenancies to allow a medical tenant. As such, there's no changes in the site improvements that are required. The checklist items are specifically in item 3 of that review letter. The checklist item number 80, the utility plan, the applicant's engineer is going to be providing that. But as it relates to the balance of these items, I take no exception to the granting of these waivers for the purposes of deeming the application complete, given the scope of the application and the nature of it.
Okay.
So Chair, we need a motion to.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, do we need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the submission waiver.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
yes,
Mr. Tannenhouse,
Yes.
Councilman Gazier,
yes,
Mr. Mercer,
yes.
and Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Eileen, if you could
Yes.
also bring in Russell from my office, he's on for traffic for the next application.
Yes, I thought the name looked familiar.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All righty. So next up is case number SP 1095, AAFRHW Property LLC for preliminary and finer major site plan with design waiver relief.
Just give me 1 second.
Mhm.
We have Craig Gianetti, the attorney. I have a few other people I'm sure need to be brought in. Mr. Gianetti, I just brought in Tung To Lamb and Sean Nager. I guess, do you need Paul Latham as well?
Yes, we're gonna need Jeremy Lang, Tung To, Sean Nager, Dan Desario, Paul Latham, Christine Cafone, and Justin Acilio if he's there. I can repeat those if you need it.
Craig, I don't think Christine's here. I think it's just Justin, honestly.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, and at some point Christine will be here,
Okay,
and we'll elevate her.
just give me a minute. So I have Jeremy, Tung, To, Paul Latham, Justin, Sean Nager. Am I missing? Oh, Dan
Dan
Desario.
Desario. And then eventually Christine Cafone. And if Paul Latham could have, if he'll be able to share his screen, he'll be kind of managing the exhibits.
Okay, for some reason Dan's not coming in. I think we got him now. Okay,
There he is.
and you have a court reporter. Do you want me to bring the court reporter in?
I might as well in case she needs to tell people to stop talking over each other or something.
Okay. Okay. Oh, Russell, hold on. Okay, we have everyone.
Great. So good evening, Chairman, members of the board, Craig Gianetti of the law firm Dave Pitney. On behalf of the applicant AAFRHW Property LLC. This is an application for preliminary final major site plan approval, as was indicated, for property along Fairfield Road, identified in the township tax map as block 177, lot 8.01. The property is located in the SED, Special Economic Development Zone. The property is approximately 45 acres in size, and the applicant's proposing to remove the existing one-story dwelling and construct two one-story warehouses with office space in each. The matter was previously scheduled for a hearing on November 22nd, 2022, but there was no evidence or no testimony presented, and we've been carried eventually to this meeting. The two proposed warehouses, there's identified in the site plan, proposed warehouse A and proposed warehouse B. Proposed warehouse A is approximately 350,000 square feet of warehouse space plus approximately 20,000 square feet of office space and associated loading bays, drive-in bays, and vehicular parking, as well as some trailer parking as well. Proposed warehouse B is approximately 125,000 square feet of warehouse space, 10,000 square feet of office, some, again, associated loading bays and drive bays, no trailer parking spaces proposed as part of that warehouse, and then vehicular parking spaces as well. The proposed warehouse use is permitted in the SED zone. The site plan as resubmitted to the board is fully conforming both to the SED zone and the township site plan ordinance. And we'll present our witnesses this evening to go through obviously the site plan and the board professional review letters. I did want to note at the outset, in the latest board engineer review letter dated January 30th, 2023, they did identify 2 design waivers, which we will be addressing, one for driveway width and one for proposing tree replacement off-site. With respect to the driveway aisle width, there was letters submitted by prior council dated February 22nd, 2022 by Ken Pape, and then as well as July 29th, 2022 from Michelle Donato, and another letter from Ms. Donato dated November 21st, 2022, outlining essentially that it was our position a design waiver is not required for the driveway width, in part because of the way the ordinance is drafted, and applying it as such would create a conflict. Section 188-106A of the Township Land Use Ordinance has a provision that states, the planning board can approve driveway access exceeding 24 feet in width, subject to certain site plan features with respect to the driveways. But then there's another specific section related to commercial and industrial areas where there's a minimum 30-foot requirement for driveways coming in. So our proposal of 30 feet conforms to what the ordinance requires, and we don't believe that the 24 width would require a waiver. With respect to the tree replacement ordinance, again, it was our interpretation, and as we made the application, we did not believe a waiver was required. We are proposing to plant trees off-site as part of the tree replacement plan. We read the ordinance to permit that without a waiver. We also received a letter from the township dated November 3rd, 2022, entitled Township Acceptance of Tree Replacement, wherein the township indicated it was willing to accept the applicant planting the trees off-site on township property, provided the planning board approves this application, and provided further that there's space on the township property for these trees. So we interpreted that as a waiver not being required. It was identified in the CME review letter as a waiver, so we will present testimony to that effect to address that waiver.
It's also my letter as a waiver too. Just so you know, Craig.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like to get into our direct presentation. We have, as we noted, getting him into the meeting, we have several witnesses, starting with Jeremy Lang, who is a representative of the applicant. And then we have Tung To Lam of Bowler Engineering for civil engineering, Sean Nager, who is the architect, Dan Desario, who is our traffic engineer, and then Christine Cafone, who is our professional planner. So at this time, I guess I want to address or confirm, I guess, on housekeeping matters. We'll be able to present our witnesses essentially all in a row as we go. And then at the end of the presentation, it would be open up to the public for questions or comments with respect to the testimony. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to call our first witness, Jeremy Lang.
Good evening.
Go ahead and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
So Mr. Lang, if you could just please provide for the board your role with the applicant and scope with respect to this project.
Certainly. Good evening again. Jeremy Lang from Active Acquisitions, where I'm the Director of Development. Active Acquisitions is essentially the parent company to the entity that is the applicant this evening. In terms of my experience, I have approximately 28 years of experience in land development, most of which in my capacity as a consulting engineer and consulting planner. Last 2.5 years, though, I have been the Director of Development at Active Acquisitions. The company was founded in 2018, and since that time has gotten approvals for over 5.6 million square feet of warehousing, which includes 2 fully constructed buildings of about 1 million square feet. We have another 3 buildings under active construction right now, and we're about to start a 6th building in the relatively near future.
Okay.
So,
if I could just hold on 1 second. Eileen, Ron's on.
Yes, I got him.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I stated earlier, I was just filling in until Ron gets in, so Ron will be taking over from here.
Thanks, Austin.
Yep, you're welcome.
all right. Ron, are you all situated?
I'm all situated, and you can continue, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. So as Craig mentioned, this is in the SCD zone. We are proposing what I'll characterize as 2 traditional warehouse buildings, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. This is a phased project for us. We intend to build the first building, the 370,000 square feet plus or minus building, which is the one closer to Fairfield. That would be phase 1. And then the second building, approximately 135,000 square feet further back, would be our phase 2. In totality, it's roughly 47% impervious coverage on the site, where 70% is permitted, just to give you kind of an idea how we are on the site. So I mentioned a second ago, traditional warehouse. So what do I mean by that? I'm just going to go through a couple things. First, it's not major distribution. It is not fulfillment, and it's not last mile. So in other words, although there's not really a bright line definition of different types of warehouse, there are a lot of different sources you can look to that have some guidelines. And I think the best way to characterize it is these warehouses will be primarily storage. Distribution, which of course is part of a warehouse, because that's the point of storing the stuff, is to eventually distribute it, would be a secondary or tertiary activity. Whereas a distribution warehouse, distribution would be the main goal. So the trucks rolling is the main event. The storage is more temporal, and just an in-between step in the handling process. So in this case, this is traditional warehousing. Storage is the primary goal. Distribution is distant second in terms of the activity level. Now, in terms of activity level, that of course, as you might imagine, is highly variable between different industries, different end users. They all have different processes. So there's always going to be a range when we're talking about these types of things. In this type of use, this traditional warehousing type of use, we would expect an inventory turnover something like every 2 to 3 months, where the contents of the building would turn over. Again, though, that's highly variable. Some things go quicker, other things, particularly like seasonal items, they might sit for half a year, and then, if it's something for the barbecue grills or something, they go out obviously in the spring, for the summer season. So what makes this site traditional warehousing? Why couldn't it just also be, a major distribution center? There's several reasons for that. First, with the geography, the site itself, while we are very conveniently located about 1,000 feet away from the interchange with State Highway Route 33, we are somewhat distant, a little over 5 miles to Interstate 195, a little over 16 miles to the New Jersey Turnpike. So if your main business is to roll trucks, it's not a great location. You're a little bit too far, really, from the turnpike if that's your main business. Your main business is storage. This makes a lot more sense. And then particularly it makes more sense if your main business is regional distribution. So in other words, you're not distributing all over the United States, but you want to be here because you're serving some kind of New Jersey market or New Jersey centric market. So that, from a geography standpoint, really kind of sets the stage. Once you get into the site itself, you have to kind of look at the rest of it, the site layout, the building, and that kind of dictates how it'll be used. So in this case, for instance, one thing you'll notice on the two buildings, both A and B, that's the front and back, they're single loaded with their loading docks. If this was a distribution use, you would be a cross dock building. So in other words, materials would come in one side and then go out the other. That efficiency sets up a real nice flow rate. So if you're moving product at a high velocity, you're going to want that efficiency. When you're single loaded like this, the product is less efficient to move through the warehouse. So it's really more set up on maximizing storage than maximizing velocity. So that's an important characteristic of the site. Next is the more you handle the goods, the faster the goods are moving, the more employees you need. That stands to reason. In this case, we have relatively limited parking. The warehousing is parked at the ordinance requirement of 1 per 5,000. That's frankly just not enough people to manage a major distribution facility. You would need a lot more people for the product handling in order to keep up with that flow velocity. So the parking is definitely a major factor. Maybe not necessarily lastly, but importantly, the buildings are relatively small. Generally, distribution centers are larger. They're usually 500,000 square feet or more and can go up to well over 1 million square feet. In this case, both buildings are well under 500,000 square feet. So again, they lend themselves to a regional storage type of use with a regional distribution model. For a warehouse like this, in totality, the range of employees will vary wildly. On the upper end, we would say maybe 275 total employees. A maximum shift, which could be an only shift, it doesn't necessarily have to be a multi-shift user, depends very much on the user, but a maximum shift we would anticipate is 175 people. And again, that would be a worst case scenario. So as a traditional warehouse, in terms of the trucks per day, it's a similar thing. If your velocity is slower, if the storage is more long-term, like I said, measured in terms of months, not days or weeks, you're going to have far fewer trucks. As far as exactly how many, again, it's very dependent on the end user, so it is a fairly wide range. But I would estimate, based on my experience, of anywhere from 30 to 100 trucks in a day. That would be, kind of the range. I think it'll actually be somewhere toward the lower end of that range for this area. And what I'm basing that on is based on the actual end users that have expressed interest in the Howell market. Based on that, those types of users are definitely going to be on the lower end of that range. I can't promise that it wouldn't ultimately be a higher one and closer to the 100 mark, but it's more likely going to be on the lower end of that range. The other thing we've done here is to provide long-term flexibility. While most of the interest we've seen are for end users that want to take the entire buildings, and for the buildings that we sold and or constructed to date, it has been single users. We do have flexibility that are designed into these structures. So the larger building, or building A, the one up front by Fairfield, we have a total of 4 tenants that are potentially available on that site. You'll see here on the exhibit, which is, I'm not sure what exhibit number this is off the top of my head here.
And that's the color rendering.
I think there's an exhibit label there, maybe
I'll tell you in a minute.
A58.
I think it's A58.
A58. So we're looking at exhibit A58. It's a color site rendering prepared by Bowler. Tung To, who's our next witness, will go into a lot more detail, but just for an orientation standpoint, building A is the large building on the left, building B is the smaller building on the right. If you look on the left side of the bigger building, building A, you'll see there's 4 kind of equally sized structures. Those are all kind of office uses that are in those locations. So we could have up to 4 separate offices. There would be demising walls, then splitting the spaces. Important note, in compliance with your ordinance, all those end users would be more than 5,000 square feet. So they would fully comply with the ordinance in the multi-tenant building. On the smaller building, the 135,000 square foot one, that's only set up for a potential for 2 tenants, and you can see the offices located in either top corner of that structure. There is the potential for these sites to be a 24/7 operation. In our experience, especially in a regional market like this, if the third shift exists at all, it's usually very light. It's just maintenance type of staff, maybe some receiving staff, but there's really not a lot of activity going on. Sometimes it's a second shift, depends again on exactly what they're handling and kind of how their workflow is, but that's a potential. But generally, they're one shifts, maybe two. We're not anticipating any significant amounts of flammable or hazardous materials on site. The site's not set up that way for any bulk storage, but to the extent there are any, they will be handled in accordance with local and state requirements. So just from an operations standpoint on the site plan, a couple quick things. We are blessed in this location to be just over 1,000 feet from the Route 33 interchange, as I mentioned before. So that makes it very convenient for our trucks to get on Route 33, which then has full access, ultimately to the highway network in New Jersey. We do have 2 driveways on the site. They're both full movements, so we're anticipating employees to use both driveways, depending on which direction they're coming from, and then access the parking lots. You can see we've got one parking lot for the larger building that's essentially parallel with Fairfield Road, and then on a smaller building, there's parking lots on either end adjacent to those 2 offices. In terms of trucks, trucks always like to circulate around a warehouse building in a counterclockwise fashion. The reason for that is so that the driver can see the loading dock that he's backing into. So on the bigger building, we would anticipate the trucks to enter at this lower or southerly driveway, circulate in a counterclockwise motion around building A. He would back into his assigned dock position, and then leaving, he would actually continue going north and exit out of the opposite driveway, the northerly driveway, which would work out well because that would put him closest to the Route 33 interchange where he'd be headed. In a similar vein, on the smaller building, here the trucks would actually enter the north driveway always, because the circulation both in and out would be from the north driveway. What they would be different though is they come into the site, they would pass building A, and then that first driveway in to building B, they would make the right turn, again going in a counterclockwise fashion, and then upon exiting, kind of same thing, they would continue counterclockwise, go all the way around and back out toward 33. In terms of refuse and recycling, difficult to see this far away, but there are compactor unit locations. There's 4 of them set up on the building right now. There is the ability to add additional if an end user would want to do that, but in our experience, the 4 locations are more than adequate. Also, recycling like bottles, cans, things like that are typically handled inside, and then it just rolled out in rolling containers down the ramps at pickup. So that's how we would anticipate refuse and recycling. A couple other things you just should be aware of as part of one of our other applications. We did complete some NJDOT roadway improvements at the interchange of Fairfield and Route 33. So those improvements are fully done. And then as we speak, both water and sewer, public water and sewer are being extended to this site as part of another application. And we're expecting that work to be complete by this spring, so that public and water and sewer will be available. So that's my operations testimony. There are 4 kind of decision points. Craig mentioned at the beginning that we do have we believe a fully conforming application, but there are 4 kind of asterisks on that. So I'm just going to run through those really quickly. And from an operations standpoint, kind of tell you what we're thinking and see where the board is at on it. First would be lighting. The lighting that's submitted as our main application is fully conforming with the ordinance. However, in conforming with the ordinance, it necessarily means it is not conforming with the Illuminating Engineering Society standards. It is typical for a warehouse to be lit to those standards. From an operational standpoint, we believe it's a more secure, more functional level of lighting that would be appropriate for a warehouse site. So Tung To will describe, the witness after me, the civil engineer, will describe in more detail the differences between the 2 lighting plans. But you should know from an operational standpoint, we would prefer the IES standard-based lighting, but that does require a waiver from the board. The ordinance level of lighting is sufficient. It's more like just sufficient, where I think the IES is definitely a step up and a better level of lighting. But we would defer to the board on that. If that's something that they agree, we'd be happy to seek that waiver. The next issue has to do with landscaping along the building. the at issue is actually along the docks, the loading docks themselves. The ordinance can be read to require landscaping along the actual loading docks. So a couple thoughts on that. One, those loading docks are located in the back of the building. So this is not something that's going to be seen from the general public. Secondly, as most people are aware, loading docks actually have a 4-foot grade differential from finished floor. So what that creates is the loading dock at the ground level where the landscaping would be located is actually down in a hole that's roughly 4 feet deep from the surrounding grade. So not only is it in the back, but it's also in a hole. The net effect of that is the truck drivers are really going to be the only people that are going to see the landscaping as they're backing into the loading dock. And they'll probably have some colorful remarks for the guy, you know, and me, whose idea was to put it there. So I think it doesn't really serve the intended purpose. And from an operations standpoint, while we could certainly make it work, it will be something that requires regular maintenance and so forth. And it doesn't really serve a purpose in terms of beautifying the site, you know, whether internally or externally. You can see here kind of a depiction of what it might look like. So it would be certainly my opinion that it would be worth not doing that and seeking a waiver. But again, we're happy to.
No, sorry, Jeremy, which exhibit? Let me just pull up. Is that just a zoom in of the current exhibit?
Craig, I think that's just zooming in of what we were looking
Yeah.
at. Is that a different sheet?
No,
Jeremy?
I think it's a new exhibit.
It's a new, it is the same image. So it is just a zoom in of the image we were looking at, but it is what was it? 59.
A59.
Yep, A59 we're looking at. So, and it just gives you, you know, kind of an artist rendering of what it might look like. It's, you know, similar to what foundation planning, it's just along the loading docks. That would be highly unusual. You know, frankly, in my entire career, I've never actually seen that anywhere. But again, we'll certainly put it in if that's the board's pleasure. But I think from an operations standpoint, it would be better for the waiver to be granted. And you know, better from an efficiency and use and maintenance standpoint. And again, not a whole lot of benefit derived because of its location and the elevation at which it's at. So I'll
Jeremy,
leave it there.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
So this exhibit, I'm assuming, is the big building that's fronting, is closer to the road, right?
Correct.
Is it the same issue with the grade differential for the smaller building in the back?
It is in both cases, the surrounding grade. It's not like immediately in a 4-foot hole. So it's not that you just get to the end of the dock and you're 4 feet down. But if you look at the grade at the property line, it's 4 feet or more, actually, in some cases down.
But it's still like the same situation where it will be, whether it's 4 feet or not, it's still like a downward elevation into that small
Correct.
building in the back, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'm sure that the applicants and like the engineering testimony, Craig, you have an engineer that's going to testify, correct?
Correct.
But I'm sure the engineer is going to testify to this, but I don't take exception to this. I see that they can comply if we require it. I don't see how this landscaping is actually going to survive, to be perfectly honest. So I don't take exception if the board were to grant the waiver, but again, it's up to the board.
Right.
Jeremy, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all. Thank you. That was great input. I very much appreciate it. Next item I wanted to touch on, Craig had mentioned this earlier, was about the trees. So again, Tung To will go into this in a lot more detail, but the Reader's Digest version is we have about 879 trees being removed. That yields under the ordinance a requirement of roughly 1,990 to be replaced. And then when you net out the 927 trees that we're installing, you wind up with 1,063 trees as the deficit. That is within the range that November 3rd letter Craig referenced contemplates, which was 1,000 to 1,100. And just to, it doesn't say it as clear as maybe as it could have in the letter, but our intent is to plant the tree. So we're not just writing a check for the township to figure it out. The idea is the township would say, plant it here, and we're going to physically install it that, you know, in that location, wherever it is.
And that tree acceptance letter is B32 for the record.
Thank you, Craig. So I just want to make that clear. This is a, a turnkey operation. The tree will be fully planted, and just like any other landscaping we would install, would have the guarantees, the maintenance guarantees and all, just like landscaping, as if it was on site. It would be the same, protections.
Hey, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah,
Does the town have capacity to plant 1,000 trees on township property? And
Well,
how long?
here's how it would work. If the board determines that that is something that it's interested in granting, then they would have, as a condition of approval, there would have to be a planting plan that shows exactly where all of these trees are being planted and when they're being planted. And if they don't have that capacity, that condition would not be satisfied and they would have to return to the board.
How long do they have them on?
I would give it, rather than a temporal thing. Well, you can make it a certain amount of months, or you could attach it to, prior to, any permits, to put shovel in the ground, or something like that. Yeah. It's generally up to the board as to what the benchmark is.
I think our expectation was it would be a condition of approval as part of resolution compliance and any developer's agreement. We would have to satisfy that with the township. And if we couldn't satisfy that condition, we'd have to come back to the board.
That's all I had on that, unless there's any other questions. If not, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the building facade. And our architect will do a much deeper dive in this, but I wanted to just present a couple different options basically that we have, and how a photo rendering basically of how it would look, just to kind of walk the board through it. But essentially we've got two different architectural facades. One meets the ordinance standards literally in every respect. The other we think is a little bit better, and the reason I'm talking about it because it's more functional from an operational standpoint. The main difference being the walls in the one that's fully ordinance compliant have much more undulations, in a much shorter distance than the one that we think actually looks better and would definitely be more functional. The more undulations you have on the wall, the less efficiency there is on the space in the interior. I'm sure that makes sense. Inside a warehouse, you're using storage. It's generally on a racking system. You've got travel ways for forklifts and other equipment to move through, and you want those generally as straight and as rectangular as possible. When you've got a wall that undulates a lot, that becomes much more difficult. And what you're really going to do is start to lose some of the interior face. There's going to have to be a buffer off of that wall, essentially, that's just not usable. And while we can certainly make that work, and if the board thinks the one that's fully ordinance compliant is a better looking building, we're happy to build it that way. But our preference would be what we're calling option one. I'm hopeful that Paul is able to get those exhibits up here shortly. Nope. But you're going to see these exhibits too, but Sean Nager will be the one discussing those. Okay.
Can I just interject?
Mhm.
Like, we worked through this already. So now you're telling me you're going to work backwards from what we worked through? Like, my letter said it was compliant and now all of a sudden you're going backwards, or like, what's the deal? Because
then I misunderstood, Jen. Maybe this is my point of confusion. Then I thought it wasn't compliant.
it was compliant. We worked through it. It was absolutely compliant. Myself, Laura, all of us had it compliant, and now you're working backwards. So,
My mistake.
and I haven't seen anything that's non-compliant. So I'm seeing this for the first time tonight, and I'm not thrilled about it, just so you know. So you guys can decide what you want to do with your application, but I'm here to tell you this non-compliant situation that you're talking about that works better for you is something that I haven't seen and I'm not thrilled about, just so you know.
Then
So you guys might want to think about it and you go forward however you want, but
then that's my mistake. I misunderstood. Then I withdraw the request. We're gonna stick then with what we had. So Paul, you can go back to the overall rendering. Okay, so then there's really only the three issues then to talk about. And again, my mistake, my confusion on that. So, but I've gone through all those now. So if there's any discussion from an operational standpoint on those, like I said, there'll be additional testimony from Tung To to go into more of the technical details of each of those issues. But if there's any questions, from the board of professionals, I'm certainly available.
Yeah, and as Mr. Lang noted, we have Mr. Land will testify more details of civil engineering. We have the architect testify more as to the building materials, facade, and layout. And we also have our traffic engineer as to the truck traffic. But Mr. Lang is here to answer questions of the board or his professionals as to his testimony.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
Earlier in your testimony, you said, as for storage, there's nothing substantial for flammables. What is the nothing substantial? I'd like to know.
Well, in the warehouse, you're always going to have cleaning products and things like that that are going to be necessary. So there's always some level of things like that. But it's typically cleaning products. But clean floors to maintain the building.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the board have any questions of him? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call our civil engineer, Tung To Lam.
Yes, present.
Okay, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please state and spell your name for the record. You just state and spell your name for the record.
First name is Tung To, Tung-To. Last name Lam, Lam.
Okay, go ahead, counsel. You can
Great,
qualify.
thank you. Mr. Lam, if you could just please provide to the board your qualifications, experience, and licenses in the field of civil engineering.
Yes, I'm a 2004 graduate from Rochester Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering Technology. Currently a PhD candidate at Rutgers in Civil Environmental Engineering. I am a licensed professional in the state of New Jersey.
And is that-
Credentials.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lam, did you or someone in your direction prepare any exhibits in connection with tonight's meeting?
We did. We prepared Exhibit A57, which is their aerial exhibit. And that will be the first exhibit for tonight. That on my testimony.
Sure.
Is
So maybe using A57, just kind of orient the board as to, north, south, west and the surrounding area.
Yep. Aerial exhibit is Exhibit 57 prepared by Boulder. It is dated January 27, 2023. Their aerial background, that photo was taken from October 7, 2022. As you can see, directly across from Fairfield Road, the rock solid projects under construction. So to the north is the top of the exhibit. The site in question is highlighted in yellow. And then the zone boundaries is highlighted in blue, and the lot boundaries for the adjacent lots are highlighted in black.
And I guess we can maybe move forward with the other exhibits you have, identify them as marked, and then we'll go through your direct testimony using those exhibits.
Okay, the next exhibit we would like to introduce would be Exhibit A62. It is a street perspective prepared by our photo simulation company. It's a view looking southeast at the building. And then there is a pack total of 4, but we're only going to be looking at page 1 and page 2. Basically, page 1 of the A62 exhibit is the planting height at day 1 of installation, and then the only difference between sheet 1 and sheet 2 of exhibit A62 is sheet 2 shows the planting heights at maturity, which is about 10 to 15 years after planting. And then we will not be talking about sheet 3 and 4 at all.
And that was the alternative that Mr. Lang referred to earlier that we're withdrawing.
Exactly.
So the option, the first and second sheet are the fully conforming architectural facades, correct?
Correct. Those are the architectural facade that's been submitted by our architect, M&H, and it's been reviewed by the board professionals.
And then what about with respect to the site plan? We already had exhibit A58 marked.
Correct.
As an exhibit.
Yeah, exhibit A58 is a site plan rendering prepared by Boulder. It is dated January 25th, 2023. And once again, same orientation as exhibit A57, which was their aerial exhibit. North is to the top of the page. Same aerial background. And then the green is their landscaping that's being proposed as part of this project. The tan outlines are the buildings, which you see there's 2 boxes of, and then the gray are the pavement associated for this project. And those are basically the 3 exhibits I'll be using tonight.
Great. So maybe starting with exhibit A57, if you could just identify the location of the property and the size of the property.
It is block 177, lot 8.01 with frontages and access only off from Fairfield Road. The size of the property is 43.93 acres, and that is after 1.22 acres of right-of-way dedication. So we could provide additional roadway improvements for Fairfield Roads, adding shoulders and things of that nature. So prior to the right-of-way dedication, the total size of property is 45.15 acres. The site is located in an SED zone, which is the Special Economic Development District.
Maybe
And-
if you could just identify the kind of the surrounding uses and neighborhood of the property.
Yep, to the north of the property is the New Jersey Natural Gas Facility. And then to the south of the facility is Baker Road, which is a private roadway with residential gardening centers and farmlands beyond. To the east of our project, within that almost inverted U shape, there's that gardening center, and then beyond our property is just wooded areas. And then to the west, we have the Fairfield Road as the frontage, and then we have the Rock Solid project, which is under construction. That's beyond the street.
And what about the existing condition of the subject property?
The site is almost 50% woodlands, 50% farmlands. There is one structure on site. It is tucked away, really hard to see. It's actually small footprint of a residential building. 1,140 square feet is their footprint for that 2-story residential building.
Now, maybe if you can give a brief kind of overview of the proposed development. And I guess initially, you heard from myself and from Mr. Lang that the application or the site plan is fully conforming to the zone. And that there's no variance relief being requested. Is that essentially the mission given to you in designing this site plan?
Yes, that was the ask, and I think we have achieved that.
Maybe just give a brief overview using, I guess, exhibit A58 kind of just describing proposed development.
Yes, switching over to A58. We're proposing 2 warehouse for this project. Each of those will have a office component. Each office is 5,000 square foot. So building A, which is the front building closest to Fairfield Row, it is 3,600, 369,242 square feet. And then building 2, which is the building directly behind building A, it is 134,714 square feet. Both the building are consistent with features such as parking, sidewalks, driveway, loading docks, trailer parking, stormwater improvements, and associated utility improvements for those buildings.
And maybe you can just describe for the board kind of the topography of the site and how the grading is going to work with respect to this site.
The site basically drains from 2 directions, but we are proposing importing soil to provide a proper separation between the seasonal high groundwater as part of the DEP stormwater requirement. So the bottom of stormwater feature has sufficient separation between that. So that really drove the site design and how we raise the site and things of that nature.
And I guess, again, what was as part of the site plan proposal, are we changing the way the stormwater is going to flow as part of the grading, or was it a function as it does today?
The grading for the proposed condition is intended to mimic the existing drainage pattern. We have reviewed a review letter from CME, and there are minor comments that we will comply with.
And with respect to stormwater, if you just give kind of a brief outline of how the stormwater management will function, and obviously compliance with state regulations and municipal regulations.
Correct. So we're fully compliant with the DEP requirements. Same thing with Howell Township requirement or county requirements. Basically, the stormwater for this project are captured with either inlets or trench drains located throughout the site, and they are either piped to a underground infiltration basins, which are the basins within the parking lots, or above ground basins, which in this exhibit you could see in that light yellow colors. As part of the DEP requirements, we are using small scale, so they're basically sprinkled throughout. The only non-small scale basin that we're using is for the roof area, which are clean waters, so they do not need to be the small scale features.
And you mentioned that the stormwater management design complies with the DEP regulations. That's also with the most recent version of the DEP regulations that were adopted, I think, a year or so ago, that all the project must comply with now.
Correct. This is in full compliance with their adopted stormwater requirement from March of 21.
And it's also compliant with the township stormwater management requirements.
Yes.
And I guess the stormwater management system, being on the private property, will be privately owned by the property owner, as well as being maintained by the property owner.
Correct.
And as part of the application and any approval, would there be an operation and maintenance manual to deal with kind of the operation of the stormwater management system and the maintenance of it?
Yes, it will. It will be reviewed by the township, and then it will be recorded with the deeds.
Right. How about potable water and sanitary sewer? If you could describe that.
The water improvements will be provided by New Jersey American Water, which is the service provider in this area. We are coordinating with New Jersey American Water for a water main extension, which will provide their both domestic and fire service for these 2 buildings. In addition to that, their fire requirements will have a fire tank on site, which is 140,000 gallons. It is a 36 feet diameter, a height of 25 feet, and adjacent to that fire tank will be the pump house, And that would be a 20 by 24 structure, and the height of that structure will be less than 25 feet. And then in terms of sanitary improvements, as part of the rock solid improvements, sanitary sewer is actually ongoing. So this project will have the benefit of that. We will tie into it, and the sewer application is under review by the township and the MUA.
Great. And what about circulation on site, how that will work with the, the vehicles and the trucks?
We're proposing 2 driveway off from Fairfield Road. They are providing circulation for both their warehouse and also for their employee parking lots. They are employee parking lot located to the western side of warehouse A, which is the front building. And then on the warehouse B, we split the employee parking lots on 2 ends. Will be on the western and eastern end, the short side of those buildings. The truck courts, which is the loading operation, is being proposed on the eastern side of warehouse A and the southern side of warehouse B. And there is a 30-foot wide ring road essentially connecting the on-site circulation to the driveway features.
Now, I indicated we have a traffic engineer, Dan Desario, that will be testifying as to traffic as well as circulation. During the site plan process, have you worked with Mr. Desario and the township to make sure that the vehicle, that the vehicle movements can be accommodated on site?
We have designed the driveway in conjunction with Mr. Desario, so that the truck can enter and exit at the same time without impacting each other.
And has this plan been reviewed by the fire bureau and the fire chief?
It has been reviewed by Chief Lewis.
And were there any issues or concerns raised about the circulation or truck traffic?
Not with the circulation, no.
Excuse me. And if we just identify the dimensions of all those routes again with respect to the ring road and the drive aisles.
The ring road for this project is 30 feet, and it connects the 2 buildings with out to the street. And then in addition to that, there is the 30-foot drive aisle for the parking lot in front for warehouse A. And then there is a 25-foot wide drive aisles for the employee parking lots for warehouse B. And then the truck court itself, which is where the loading operation would occur, that is 70 feet wide.
And if you can, moving into the loading docks, just describe and identify, the location and how many there are.
For total, there's 82 loading docks being proposed for this project. Warehouse A, on the east end of that, there's 50 loading docks. And then for warehouse B, there's 32 located on the western end.
And how about tractor trailer storage or parking?
Trailer storage is only being proposed for warehouse A, and there's 30 of them located opposite of the truck court.
I mean, Paul, are you able to kind of move the cursor over that? Yeah, that area over there is for the tractor trailer storage. Now, what about vehicular parking, lot size and location?
For warehouse A, we're proposing 137 parking spaces, with eight of them being ADA and 9 of them being EV spaces, and that's located between Fairfield Road and warehouse A. And then for warehouse B, we're splitting the parking lot. So on the 2 short ends, each end would have 29 total parking spots, and 2 of those spaces would be ADA and 2 of those spaces would be EV. So in total for this project, we're proposing 195 parking spaces, and 12 of those are ADA and 13 of those are EV. That is fully compliance with their township requirement.
And I guess overall, the circulation, parking, drive aisle widths, truck turning, is it all compliant with township requirements?
Yes.
And you heard me in my introduction, there was a waiver noted in the CME review letter with respect to drive aisle width. In designing the 30 feet, were you relying on the ordinance that requires driveways into commercial industrial areas have a minimum width of 30 feet?
Yes,
And does this proposal comply with that?
it does.
If we can maybe now move on to lighting.
Yes, so we've submitted a 40 compliance lighting plan as part of our package. And then in addition, we have also submitted an alternate lighting plan. The only difference is the 40 compliance lighting plans obviously have no design waivers or variances from the township requirement.
And if we could just, hold on one second, see if we can just identify the exhibit number of the exhibit that's up right now.
This is from the site plans A3.
It's from the site plan A3, thank you. Okay, T, so you can, this is a lighting plan from the site plan set of A3.
Correct. So the only difference between this and the next exhibits we'll be talking about is this lighting design is fully compliance with the township requirements. The only difference, once again, is it does not meet the IENS requirement. So,
And what is the IES requirement?
there are a total of 4 items. It is the minimum average for warehouse and loading dock, 10-foot candle being required. Then the average to minimum for warehouse and the loading dock being a ratio of 5:1 being permitted.
Right, no, but when you say IES, what is IES?
Oh, sorry.
Come on.
Well, having seen your moment.
Sorry.
It's Illuminating Engineering Society.
Yes, sorry.
No problem.
Okay, so you've indicated that the plan being presented is not, though in conformance with the town ordinance, is not in conformance with the IES lighting standard.
Correct. So the difference is it's a slightly brighter lighting plan design. So while we can provide a lighting design that's in full compliance with the township requirement, if the town prefers, we can switch over to their alternate lighting plan, which complies with their IES requirements. But it does require a deviation from the township requirements, which is their maximum average for the entire site. Half of her candle is permitted. If we switch over to the alternate lighting plan, then that level jumps up to 3.07 for candles.
And so we're showing now on the sheet is the alternate lighting plan.
A16.
A16. And so again, I guess testimony is to that from your perspective, this lighting plan that is compliant with the IES standards is more appropriate, provides better lighting. But if the town's preference to have a fully conforming one with this ordinance that has a little less brightness, we can do either or essentially.
Absolutely.
With respect to the light fixtures, what are the heights of those?
They are 24 feet in both design.
And are they all recessed and shielded?
The LED itself are shielded, but there are some particular lights that have additional house size shield added onto them, and that is on their township 40 compliance one. The alternate lighting plan has their LED equipped items, but it does not have an extra house side shield to certain lights. That's one of their main difference.
And with respect to the lighting plan, is there any spillage of lighting onto adjacent property owners, I guess, under either scenario?
Both option will have no spillage.
And what about, dimming after hours? How will the lighting work during after hours or overnight hours?
All the proposed lights are to provide with the dimming control to allow for dimming options when the site is not active. So that comes with the package on either lighting design, the fully compliance one or the IES lighting plan.
And then maybe moving on to landscaping.
Yes, there
And Paul,
are
if you bring up the, I guess, using the overall aerial exhibit A58.
yes. So as part of this project, there are 23 acres that are located outside of their disturbance. So that's either being proposed or additional landscaping is being added to them.
And what are the dimensions of the landscaped areas?
We're fully compliant with the 50-foot residential buffer along Baker Road. There's also a 50-foot active farmland buffer around block 177, lot 12. And we are in full compliance with the buffering requirement from the township.
And I guess with that, we have the increased landscaping in the buffer areas.
Yes, we do.
And we're willing to work with Ms. Spiro as to the landscaping plan and addressing any landscaping concerns she has.
Absolutely.
Now you heard the testimony, I guess, I don't know if we need to get into it, of the foundation plantings near the loading docks. I guess you heard the testimony of Mr. Lang, that he didn't deem it appropriate, and Ms. Beam
I
as
think
well.
We talked about that already. I don't mean to interrupt you, and it's totally your case. You can put on whatever you want, but I think.
I
that-
was just going to ask him if he was in agreement with you and Mr.
okay, I'm
Lang.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I
It's
thought
okay.
we addressed that.
Mr. Lamb, are you in agreement with Ms. Beam and Mr. Lang as to the reasonableness of providing that landscaping in the loading area?
Yes, we agree that it should not be provided at the loading dock.
Now, can you talk about the current number of trees on the property that would be removed, as well as the number that would have to be replaced either on site or off site?
Yes, 879 trees are being proposed to be removed. As part of the township calculation, 1,990 trees are required to be replaced. We are able to provide 927 replacement trees on site without counting for any of the street trees along Fairfield Road. If you follow with all that mumble jumbles, it would come out to be 1,063 replacement trees that were being proposed offsite on a township facility, and the detail would be worked out as part of our resolution compliance. And as part of this project, we're also proposing 2,737 plants in total, over 39 species. And if needed, we could provide additional information about the stray trees and so on and so forth. But in total, 2,737 plants in 39 different species.
And what about signage? If you could please testify as to the signage proposed for the project.
Signage, there's only one monument sign is being proposed at the northern driveway. The sign detail is located within their architectural package that was submitted. But it is fully compliance. We do comply with the 10-foot setback from Fairfield Road. The size is 9 feet by 3 feet, 9 feet long by 3 feet high. And that is once again also in compliance with their township requirement, which allows for 12 feet long and 3 feet high.
And I know Mr. Lang touched on it briefly. If you can just talk about the trash and recycling storage and removal, where identify the locations of the trash and recycling, at least on site or outside of the building.
Right adjacent to the drive-up ramps for each of the 2 buildings, there's total of 2 drive-up ramp for each buildings. Directly adjacent to that, we're proposing a compactor, and it is being screened by a landscape area with a landscape islands, and the trash removal and recycling would be done by a private hauler, and screening has been provided.
And what about the status of outside agency approvals? What's been submitted and the status of it?
We have county approval that was granted back in December 21. We have Freehold Soil Conservation District certification. The water is still under review by New Jersey American Water, and we're in discussion with them on their water main extension. And their fire service on site does require a fire tank and a pump house. Sewer is still under review by Howell Township. And
I'm sorry, could you repeat that about the fire tank?
yes, the water, domestic and fire service being provided by New Jersey American Water, but for each of the building, we're proposing a 140,000 gallons fire tank.
You are. Is that because you anticipate the water service not be adequate, or you're just being cautious? What happens if the water service is adequate?
Based on information available today from New Jersey American Water, we believe those tanks are necessary, and they've been coordinating with our fire suppression engineers. So,
what is the proposed height of those tanks? Are you going
the tanks
wide
are
and short, or are you going tall?
25 feet in height, 36 feet in diameter for the fire tank itself. The pump house will be 20 by 24, and the height will be less than 25 feet.
It looks like by the landscaping, no one will even know it's there. It's going to be buried in the trees. Is that what the proposed plan is?
Exactly. We want to hide it and tuck it away as best as we can.
And what will be the height of those trees around that when they're in full growth?
More than 25, but I'll have to confirm the exact number and species for you.
And that tank and pump house will be for both buildings?
No, it's one for each building.
Where's the second one?
Paul, can you pan over? Sorry, mistake. It is one for both buildings, not 2.
Okay, and has that been reviewed by our fire department or?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just to continue with outside approvals, NJDEP, the wetland delineation has been received, and there is no for any endangered species noted. The general permit and the transition averaging is under current review. Environmental Commission, it was review, and we have a letter from our environmental consultant to address their additional comments, which was also some addressing CME's prior comments. And the fire has no objection, and that letter was dated back in June of 22. And that concludes their status of their outside agencies.
And there's been various board professional review letters that have been submitted. Have you been involved with various meetings or TRCs of the board professionals to kind of discuss some of the comments in those letters?
Yes, the most recent one being Tuesday.
And even prior to that, the plans were revised to address a lot of the comments in the earlier review letters.
Yes.
In your receipt of the board engineer review letter, January 30th, 2023. Opportunity to review that review letter. I believe you addressed a lot of it in your testimony, but you'll be able to comply. I guess at the end of it, it has some technical comments You'll be able to comply with the comments in that letter.
Correct.
That's all. I have a direct presentation of this witness. If there's any questions of the board or as professionals of Mr. Lamb.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions.
Sure.
I'm not sure if Tong's the witness to address this. I know that you guys said you're going to comply with all of our technical comments. We had noted your circulation plan. There were significant overlaps with the wheelbase 67 movements on the site. And I know Tong testified that the movements were all adequate. So is anything going to be made wider? Are the curves going to be changed? How are you going to address the comment?
I think our traffic engineer was going to address that comment.
Okay, and relative to frontage improvements, is that also going to be on your traffic engineer? Jeremy opened with, he met with the DOT, there's improvements, who's going to speak to that?
Those improvements with DOT was constructed, but our next witness, Dan, would be able to provide additional info on it.
And he's going to speak about frontage improvements?
Yes, we could cover the frontage improvements. Paul, can you pull up the next exhibits, which I believe is A63? So what you have on this exhibit is a 2-pager. The first page shows the north arrow being to the right side of the page. So the top of the page is west. So it's showing rock solid, which is the project under construction. Next to it is the Stavola site, which is a separate application that has not been before the planning board yet. And then on the bottom of the page is the freezer site, which is the application before us tonight. So we just focus in on the rock solid and the freezer frontage. There are a total of 4 driveways, and we are reconstructing and widening the road to the proper dimensions, and we have coordinated that with the township engineer. Basically, we are going to provide a 12-foot travel lane in 1 lane in each direction, a 10-foot shoulder, and then a 5-foot grass strip, followed by a 5-foot sidewalk. In total, it basically brings the right-of-way half width on our side to 33 feet. And the existing roadway currently is only 22.4 feet, and that's from pavement to pavement. And we're making substantial improvements to that. And the additional detailing dimensions and things of that can be found on the sheet 2, which is same as sheet 1 of this exhibit. It just zooms, it just focused in and a different scale. That's all.
That's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for.
Sure.
You had mentioned, or Mr. Lang had mentioned that the site was going to be built in 2 phases. Is it going to be cleared in 1 phase, and will it be planted the same?
Yes, we would do the clearing in 1 phase.
So you'll clear, I guess, the entire site in 1 phase, and then what about, how's the landscaping going to be broken out?
The landscaping will basically be completed when the first building, it will be with that, and then the second building, because we don't want to put plants in and then it would get impacted during the phase 2 construction, which is why we're doing it that way.
Well, here's my follow-up question to that, though. Your tree replacement requirements are based upon the fact, they're triggered when you clear. So, I mean, what's the timing for phase 2? What happens if phase 2 never happens?
I believe the landscape bond would be in place. So if phase 2 never happens, those trees will still be fully bonded. So.
So I assume just the trees around building 2 wouldn't go in, but all the rest of this plant material will be installed, as well as, you know, if the applicant plants for the township too.
Yes.
What is the timing though for phase 2, do you expect?
That might be more, I mean, that might be a question for Mr. Lang.
The
Whoever.
intention is for one building to follow another, but it's highly market driven. So our intention is to, you know, go one after the other.
Well, I assume if there's 2 phases, it would go one after the other. But I guess my only concern is you have an obligation that gets triggered. We have some of that obligation accounted for, but not all of it accounted for. So someone's going to have to explain to me, you know, how to button that up a little bit. It doesn't have to be right now, but, you know, along the way here before the end of the night.
Mr. Chair, would I be able to jump in? Would you mind if I just address that issue quickly?
No, go ahead.
My audio working?
You said you can hear me, Jeremy?
Again, Jeremy Lang,
Yeah.
remaining under oath. As far as the clearing, if we were to clear both phases initially, typically, and what's been our experience in how would be a restoration bond would be required. So not only would we be bonding for the off-site trees, but also to restore the site. If for some reason we cleared phase 2 and for whatever reason it didn't go forward, there would be a restoration bond in place to replant that entire site. I can tell you we wouldn't clear it or go forward if we weren't pretty certain we were going to move forward with the full construction.
Respectfully,
At that time,
I
if we
the
think for
town
some
is
reason there'll be a
entitled-
substantial delay in time, then we would not clear phase 2 on day 1.
All right, respectfully, I think the town would be entitled to a restoration bond separate and apart from the required replacement trees.
Correct.
Ms. Dubin,
Yes.
didn't we amend our ordinance 2 years ago to make it so that someone could, if someone had multiple buildings on a site, they can only clear the part of the site they were supposed to do that particular building they had a permit for?
Well, I think what they're saying is they want to clear it all in phase 1. They are proposing phasing. They want to clear it all in phase 1. But I think what Ron, myself, and Shari are trying to understand is then when do we get the replacements for phase 2? The replacements are automatically triggered once all the clearing is done.
But I want to take it to
Correct.
I want to take it to the conversation to a different level. I understand that part. I thought that the council put into place, unless you had your building permit and you were ready to clear, you were not to clear that particular land. So if phase 2 doesn't have a building permit at the same time that they do phase 1, the phase 2 portion of the property should remain at its natural state.
I have to be honest with you, Brian, I'm gonna have to look in the code. I'm not aware that our ordinance would preclude that. Typically, that's what we see though, is if something's cleared in phases, we don't typically come in and clear it all in totality. And then, sorry, I'm echoing, and then replace in such a fashion. So I will quickly go through the code. I'm not familiar that our ordinance was amended that stated that you have to clear at that time. And that certainly they're here for the woodlands management as one part, not in sections.
What's the time limit on a restoration bond before they have to replant?
So that's the issue, is a restoration bond, the town would have to call the bond. And again, I want to be clear, I think it should be a requirement for 2 bonds. There's something for restoring the site, and then there should be something separate if they don't trees that are required to be replaced.
Agreed.
Okay, well, let's allow Laura some time to look that up. We can revisit it, but the applicant is aware of the issue. So, I mean, are there any other board questions?
I had a couple. Tong, are there any restrictions coming out of the subject property for tractor trailers making a left or right onto Fairfield?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is that something, though, that the traffic engineer would be better
I don't
to?
know.
Yes.
Yeah, our
Mr.
traffic engineer will
Giannetti?
be our traffic engineer will be addressing truck traffic and circulation
Okay.
Okay.
in the
And then my
surrounding
other-
roadways.
My other question, and Tong, I'm not sure if you're the guy for this either. There was a phase one, there was a preliminary assessment, and then there was a limited site investigation done on the property for a slew of area of concerns. And I noted that at the Environmental Commission that there's 2 open NJDEP case numbers for underground storage tanks that remain open. Now, I know GZA went out and poked some holes and all the samples were all well and good, but those case numbers remain open. What is the deal and how are you guys planning on closing those?
As part of the construction, they'll be coordinated for those issues.
Do you have someone who's gonna testify to that?
And coordinated, but with who and by who?
With the active construction team and the GZA, which is our environmental consultant for this project, who prepared the phase one, the PA and the SI.
I
So
mean,
just
I think
on
that-
this issue, then before any construction begins, is there an RAO that has to be issued, or what are the steps in the process? Like, how does the remediation fit in with everything else going on the property in terms of sequence?
Perhaps if I can
Yeah, Mr.
jump in again. Mute your mic, since I was-
I can hear you. Mr. Lang?
Yes, so Bullock Tully went out there and did geophysical survey of all the locations where they believe the tanks might possibly be. They also did soil testing out there, and they weren't able to find any evidence of any spills or tanks. The only way to be 100% sure is actually to do the construction, and in the course of doing all the earthwork, if the tank is there, they would then find it. However, all the likely locations, we know the house is still physically there, so it's not like we're trying to figure out where the house used to be. We know exactly where the house was, and you'll see in their site investigation report that they did the testing all around the house. So we are very confident, based on their work, that the tank is not there. In the event, though, that somehow the tank was in a really bizarre location, we use professional contractors. They are well aware of what to do if they hit any kind of environmental, whether it's a tank like this or some other just unforeseen or unknown thing. So they know how to call and report to DEP. They would get a case number and then, go through the whole LSRP process. If something unexpected, either just entirely unexpected or in a location that's not expected, was, encountered.
Well, I guess the issue is you already have 2 open case numbers with the DEP.
Well, Nick, by the way, Malkin Tully is a geotechnical engineering firm, so like,
Yeah, but GZA owns them, so I think.
okay, that's what I'm gonna ask, like, who exactly went out there and they said they did an investigation and they didn't find the tanks or evidence of a spill, so how did they determine there was no evidence of a spill?
Yeah, I mean, what we.
By testing the soil.
Yeah.
So they tested the soil.
They did, limited, there was a slew of area of concerns, which it's all well and good. I reviewed all the data and it's all below DEP standards, but these case numbers are, I think one's a 1996, if I remember correctly, and a 1998. So these are legacy cases that have been out there for a while. And Jeremy, I understand what you're saying, that, you're gonna grade the property, you find something, but what if you don't find something? You still have these open case numbers that you got to close the loop on. And you don't necessarily need an LSRP because they're home heating oil tanks. You can close them with DEP and they can issue a no further action letter. You choose to do it with an LSRP, that's fine. But you have these legacy cases that are out there that need to be closed.
I mean, we can certainly commit to endeavoring to close the cases with the DEP. I don't have a problem doing that.
Nick, what's up with the 55-gallon drums that's indicated in the environmental commission?
Yeah, I think there were some plastic drums. Again, I believe they were, again, none of this stuff has been submitted to the DEP. This is all kind of a quasi due diligence. I mean, they went out, they did some testing. They wanted to see what was going on based upon a phase 1 and a PA, but nothing's been submitted to the DEP. An LSRP isn't retained. Again, I didn't see anything that stuck out, any red flags, but as of right now, it's an administrative issue that needs to be taken care of.
Tell you, Jeremy, the testimony is part of any approval. We'll agree to work with the DEP to close out those legacy cases.
Correct.
That's all I got.
Are there bollards at the parking that's perpendicular to the front face of the facility?
Yes, they are.
I'm gonna think about the lighting a little bit more, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I think we'll probably discuss it with our professionals. But yeah, I don't have an answer on that one. Or any comments right now on that, but I'm sure I will later.
Okay. Anybody else from the board have any questions?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to chime in on the trees. I haven't seen anything specific to phasing, but it appears in order to get a CO, they would need to have their trees rectified. That's under 180-193, subsection 3. It says prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, construction code officials shall receive a release from the administrative officer or his or her designee that all trees to be retained and all trees to be replaced under the tree removal permit are in fact in existence, and that all debris / generated as a result of these activities has been removed. So it would appear to me that if they submit this as one phase, in order to get a CO for that first building, which is phase 1, all of the replacements would have to be done.
So that, Laura, would mean that all trees on site, whether they are associated with phase 1 or phase 2, would need to be planted, and all trees that were to be planted off-site on municipal property would also need to be planted.
Right, so that's basically the back door of you can't clear phase 2.
Yeah.
If you want to get phase 1 operational.
Let's see it. Laura, can you give me that citation again?
Yes, it's 188-193 C2 C3.
C2, C3?
No, C3,
Oh.
188-193, capital letter C, bracket 3.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I don't know who would answer this, maybe the professionals or Ron, but so let's say they finish their construction phase 1. How long are the permits open for phase 2?
That's within the construction code. I'm not sure. It's not a land use, zoning issue, how long their construction permits would be open for.
Well, my question is, so let's just say, I'll just throw a number out there, I don't know, 5 years. Well, in those 5 years, technology advances. I mean, they're probably going to build with the new technology, but that's not coming before the board now. It's going to be new tech. So
Well, I mean, if it's something that changes the plan that we approve, they need to come back. They're for in terms of our approval, the plan that gets signed, that's what they have to build. And if they don't build that, they got to come back.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question.
Shoot.
And I don't recall, and they may have mentioned, there's no issue with any wetlands buffering. I think they said letter of delineation was already done. Because isn't there a stream that runs to on like the northeast side of that property a bit?
So which stream are you referring to?
It's small. I think it's just off to the northeast side, like where the road comes up for the second building, right on the northeast edge. Like over, yeah, I believe, isn't there a small stream that runs or a creek that runs right behind that boundary?
It's mostly wetlands and bogs and beyond the property.
But it's nothing that would trigger like a buffering issue or anything with the build.
No.
Thank you.
Is there wetlands on the property?
Yes, there are wetlands on the property. We receive a delineation from NJDP confirming those and its associated buffer, and there's confirmation that there's no threatened endangered species on this property.
Would you happen to have a slide you can show us real quick, please?
For the wetland?
Yes.
This
Maybe
is-
if you could just identify this exhibit that's being used.
This is A3. This is their submitted site plan. So what you see in green.
And
with
what sheet of what sheet of the site plans?
It is C301 of the site plan. Basically page 9, if you go by the PDF page number. So the area you see in the green are the wetlands that are confirmed by DEP. And there are several of those throughout the property. And the area in orange are the confirmed buffers. And then the red are the compensation area for the areas in pink that were disturbing.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Those wetlands, what becomes of them during this construction process after the trees are taken out? Are they restored, they're natural wetlands, or are they gone?
We're not disturbing the wetlands for this project. They remain untouched.
Okay, anybody else? Okay,
There's no other questions of Mr. Lamb. I'd like to move on to my next witness, Dan Desario, who's our traffic engineer.
Paul, can we take a 5?
yes, we can. I was gonna say that actually. I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess.
The board will take a 5-minute recess. We'll be back at 8:56. Okay, the planning board will now reconvene.
You can call your next witness.
I don't know if he's back yet.
The witnesses, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There we go. Nope.
Yes, good evening, Chairman. We're back.
Okay, we're ready for your next witness, Mr. Giannetti.
At this time, I'd like to call Dan Desario.
Okay, is he on screen?
Yes, he's the one
Okay.
with the headset.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Certainly. My name is Dan. Last name is Desario. D-I-S as in Sam. A-R-I-O.
Okay, counsel, if you can qualify Mr. Desario.
Sure, Mr. Desario, if you could please provide for the board your experience, qualifications, and licenses in the field of traffic engineering.
Certainly. I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Temple University. I also have a Master of Science in Transportation Engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, as well as other states. I'm also a professional traffic operations engineer, a PTOE, which is a national certification upon successful completion of an exam. I have prepared over 1,000 traffic studies for almost every conceivable land use. I have been accepted as an expert in the field of traffic engineering before hundreds of boards throughout New Jersey. Specifically regarding warehouse projects, I've been involved with warehouse projects throughout the country and am approaching close to 1 billion square feet of warehouse projects again throughout the country. And
We will
just
accept your credentials. You're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to add.
I almost didn't want to stop you.
Yeah, I
I'll go on all night if you
Right.
get.
I don't want to belabor it. Just anecdotally, just for a little levity to the night, because I know it's getting late. I grew up in Perth Amboy, down the street from a Preferred Freezer warehouse building. I was a block away from it. I currently live in South Brunswick, not far from exit 8A on the Turnpike. And I am broadcasting to you from my home right now, which is situated again in South Brunswick across Route 130 from both a Coca-Cola warehouse as well as a L'Oreal warehouse. So I would respectfully submit to the board. I think I was destined to work on warehouse projects. And I'm happy to appear before you this evening, and thank you again.
All righty.
Mr. Desario, in connection with this application, you and your office prepared a traffic impact study that was submitted with the application?
We did. It's entitled Traffic Impact Study, and it's dated November 1st, 2021.
And if you just describe kind of what you did in preparation of preparing that report and your findings with respect to it.
Certainly. And I'd be happy to answer any specific questions the board has in terms of any of the details of the study. I will take you through the different components of that traffic study to convey to you the work that we have completed as part of that study. The first step with that study was to establish existing traffic conditions by way of traffic volumes. We arranged for traffic counts to be conducted on Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. From 6 in the morning to 10 in the morning. And then again from 2 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening. And we intentionally selected those times to bracket school hours, not only arrival times in the morning, but dismissal times in the afternoon. So typically you do counts from 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 to capture commute times. But again, we elected to do them from 6 to 10 in the morning and 2 to 6 in the evening. Once we collected that traffic data and in terms of the intersections, we counted along the Fairfield Road corridor from the north at the signalized intersection with Park Avenue all the way down to the south with Adelphia Road and all the intersections in between, not only the unsignalized intersections like Baker Road and Bennett Road, but the Route 33 ramps as well. Based on that traffic count data that we collected, we identified that the hours where the highest traffic volumes recorded at all those intersections occurred during the morning from 7:30 to 8:30 and from 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon. So we identified those as the peak hours where the highest amount of volume through the Fairfield Road study corridor was identified. Once we've established those peak hour volumes based on the traffic counts that we conducted, and understanding that traffic conditions were affected, unfortunately, by the pandemic that we all had to live through, we elected to review historic data that was available and published, and specifically NJDOT had some counts in the area from 2013 as well as 2016. They specifically pertain to the on and off ramps of Route 33 at Fairfield Road, as well as along Park Avenue, which is also known as Business Route 33. And looking at some of the DOT's historic data versus the counts we conducted in 2021, we elected to make adjustments to the 2021 volume data, and we increased those volumes to be in line with the historic NJDOT data. So we conservatively adjusted our counts and our volumes higher to reflect pre-pandemic levels. And we also reviewed traffic data that was collected in 2018 and 2019 by another consultant in preparation of the application that appeared before this board for the Rock Solid project, which is directly across the street from the site that we are discussing this evening. And we found good consistency between that 2018 and 2019 data with the adjusted volumes that we derived from our 2021 counts. So respectfully, with the adjustments we made, I would submit to you that I believe the traffic volumes that we have established to represent existing conditions along the Fairfield Road corridor are conservative and likely higher than what would otherwise exist out there today. Once we established those 2021 peak hour adjusted traffic volumes, we then applied a background growth rates to those volumes consistent with published growth rates that the NJDOT puts out for traffic studies. So we chose a 2023 design year for purposes of analysis. So we took our adjusted 2021 peak hour volumes and we grew them by various growth rates to take them to a 2023 baseline condition. That application of the background traffic growth rates is to account for regional development that then creates regional traffic growth. Once we establish those 2023 base traffic volumes, we also looked at local traffic growth that would be created by local developments. We specifically accounted for 4 other developments and the traffic associated with those developments. The first one being active 29 along Howell Road, which had previously appeared before this board. The Black Rock Enterprises project, as well as the Rock Solid, which is right across from this site, and then the New Jersey natural gas project, which is just to the north of this site. So identified traffic volumes associated with those developments. We added the traffic from those developments on top of, in addition to, the 2023 base volumes to create the 2023 no build volumes. So the volumes that would exist in the future without the proposed development that's before you this evening. And again, given all the adjustments that we've made, the accounting of background traffic growth, as well as accounting for the local developments in the area, I would submit to you that our future 2023 base volumes are conservative and likely higher than what would otherwise occur. So at that point, we need to identify how much traffic this proposed project would generate. And typically, traffic engineers rely on a publication, which I'm sure the board is familiar with. It's entitled a Trip Generation Manual, and it's in its 11th edition. Now, that publication essentially creates trip rates by which traffic engineers across the nation use to estimate how much traffic a particular land use would generate. And it's based on empirical data that's collected from existing sites throughout the country. Now, you've heard from Mr. Lang earlier this evening in terms of the types of operations that he expects for the tenants that are likely to occupy these buildings. And at the risk of adding some confusion in terms of the vernacular that we're using, Jeremy was using traditional warehouse. And in terms of the traffic engineering profession, and specifically the Trip Generation Manual, a traditional warehouse is more representative of older warehouse buildings. You can think of buildings from like the 80s and 90s and earlier, where there's not a lot of mechanization inside the building. There's not a lot of modernization inside those buildings. And those older warehouse buildings had more labor-intensive operations. So they employed more people in order to run the inside operations of those buildings. More modern warehouses and those that largely have been built in our state in the last 10 to 15 years really are more known as high cube warehouses. And they're very modern, state of the art, lots of mechanization inside them, and less reliant on labor to run their operations. So high cube warehouses tend to generate on a per square foot basis less traffic in terms of cars and trucks. And traditional warehouses, in terms of the published data, tend to generate more traffic because they're more labor intensive and generate particularly more car traffic. We've elected, again, to be conservative with our analysis of the impacts of this project that's before you this evening, have elected to use traditional warehouse trip rates to estimate trip generation of this proposed project. Specifically, we use the trip rates for land use code 150, which is warehousing in the Trip Generation Manual. I fully expect that the numbers I'm going to give you in a moment, that the actual trip generation, once these buildings are occupied, if the board grants approval, will generate less traffic than what I'm about to describe. So again, based on land use code 150 warehousing out of the Trip Generation Manual in its 11th edition, we would estimate in round numbers, they're going to vary a little bit from what's in our study, but in round numbers, during a morning peak hour, so 1 hour between 7 and 9 in the morning, 65 cars would come in, 30 cars would exit, for a total two-way volume of 95 car trips. Again, in the morning peak hour, based on ITE data, we would estimate for trucks, 5 would come in, 5 would exit, for a total truck two-way volume of 10 trips. So the total trip generation, both cars and trucks, for a morning peak hour, we would estimate 70 coming in, 35 exiting, for a total two-way volume of 105 trips. In the evening, so evening peak hour, 1 hour between 4 and 6 in the evening, again, using the same published trip rates, 20 cars come in, 80 would exit, for a total two-way car volume of 100. And for trucks, 8 would come in, 8 would exit, for a total truck two-way volume of 16 truck trips. And then the total for the weekday evening peak hour, both cars and trucks, 28 trips in, 88 out, for a total two-way volume of 116. Now, just to qualify that and give the board a benchmark, if you will, to compare to, many jurisdictions, including NJDOT, consider any land use that generates 100 or less peak hour trips in any specific peak hour as not being a significant traffic generator. Admittedly, our estimates, 105 trips in the morning peak hour, 116 trips in the evening peak hour, are more than that 100 trip threshold. But I would submit to you, not significantly more. So I would respectfully characterize the level of trip generation that we expect this development to generate will not be significant and will not translate into any significant changes to area traffic operations. To give you an idea and an estimate for a total 24-hour estimate of both car and truck trips. So for a 24-hour period, using again the published trip rates, 280 cars would come in, 280 cars would exit, for a total two-way car volume of 560 trips. 150 trucks would come in, 150 trucks would exit, for a total truck volume of 300 trips over the course of a day. So total car and truck trips over the course of a day, 430 trips coming in, 430 trips exiting, for a total two-way volume, vehicular volume, cars and trucks, of 860 trips. Now, these numbers are higher in terms of the trucks than what Jeremy had indicated he expects for this project. And I agree with Jeremy in terms of the truck trips and the number of trucks this project is going to generate will be lower than the estimates that I just testified to. But we intentionally wanted to represent higher numbers based on published data to put forth a very conservative analysis in our traffic study and for this board's consideration. Now, just to give you further references in terms of what you can expect for this development, industry experience, typically, you'll turn over a dock door anywhere from 1 to 2 times a day. So if you wanted to go by that measure, if you will, we have 82 dock doors. That might translate into 82 trucks a day, up to 164 trucks a day. But we've based our analysis on 150 trucks a day. We've also done counts at existing warehouses in New Jersey. And I can tell you from my experience, based on collecting that data at existing warehouses, that New Jersey warehouses, by and large, generate less traffic than what would otherwise be suggested by the published data. And I'll give you a real world example, again, to help frame for you what we could reasonably expect this development to generate. So this development, round numbers, 500,000 square feet. 2 buildings. Each of those buildings, as you're aware, are single loaded. That means they only have dock doors on one side of the building. Having dock doors on only one side of each of these buildings limits the amount of throughput that each of these buildings could process, which tends to lower the amount of activity that can be conducted inside the buildings, and also translates into less traffic, not only in terms of trucks, but cars as well. So there's a relatively new warehouse development. I didn't work on it specifically. Another consultant took it through entitlements, but I did peer review of the traffic work that was being done for the owner for a potential purchaser of that development, which they elected to go ahead and buy that project, and now they own it. So it's over in Mansfield, right off 295. It's 960,000 square feet, 2 buildings. One of the buildings is double-sided loading, so it has loading docks on both sides. The other building is a single-sided building, much like the 2 that are proposed before you this evening. So it's 960,000 square feet. It's got 144 docks. So roughly double in size on a square footage basis to what's before you this evening. But in Mansfield, that 960,000 square foot warehouse development, for the entire day, it generated 121 cars. So 121 cars came in, 121 cars came out over the entire day. And 52 trucks came in and 52 trucks came out over the course of an entire day. So what that translates to, if you wanted to look at truck generation on a per dock door basis for that project or that development in Mansfield, each dock door, and there were 144 of them, generated 0.37 trucks per day. That tends to be on the lower range of what industry experience usually is, 1 to 2 times a day turning over dock doors. That is consistent with what Jeremy's expectation is, and I share that expectation for this development. You have relatively small warehouse buildings that are being proposed. I know, relatively speaking, somebody could think, okay, 360, call it 370,000 square foot building is a big building, and it is. But in the context of warehouse buildings, these buildings I would characterize respectfully as being small ones. And this is just my personal belief, anything from 450 down, in my opinion, is a small warehouse building. 450 to 750, medium-sized warehouse building. Anything bigger than 750,000 square feet is a large warehouse building. I've seen warehouse buildings. I know of one of my clients has a 1.8 million square foot building in their portfolio. These buildings are small. You've heard from Jeremy, they're also being positioned where they could be multi-tenanted. The big building could have up to 4 tenants. The small building could have up to 2 tenants. Very traditional design in terms of providing the parking, particularly on the small building, on either end. So the way these buildings are being set up, the types of tenants that are likely to occupy them are going to be ones that don't have a lot of activity and throughput. They're limited by the parking. They're limited by the fact that there's only loading docks on one side of each of these buildings. So real world, bigger development in Mansfield, generating less traffic than the numbers.
Dan, I'm just gonna cut you off because you've been going on for quite a while about Mansfield, which is totally irrelevant. Can we bring it back to what we're dealing with here?
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Real world generates a fraction of the traffic that we've identified based on published trip rates. And again, respectfully, our numbers are conservative. I think the actual tenants that would occupy these buildings will generate less traffic than we've identified, but nonetheless, we've chosen to use the published rates, again, to put forth the conservative analysis. So with that, once we've identified traffic estimates for this development, we then had to identify, okay, where's the traffic going to be coming to and from? With respect to truck traffic, we fully expect trucks will be relegated to the Route 33 corridor to and from this site. So the trucks that will come to and from this site will use Fairfield Road and travel between the Route 33 interchange with Fairfield Road and the proposed site driveways along Fairfield Road. So our truck traffic will be relegated to a very short section of Fairfield Road between Route 33 and the proposed site driveways. With respect to the car traffic, we have done what's called a journey to work model. It's based on looking at census data for people that work in this area and where do they live. So based on that journey to work model that we've prepared, we expect in terms of a split between Fairfield Road to the north of the site and Fairfield Road to the south of the site, 80% of the cars would be to and from the north along Fairfield Road, with the majority of them using Route 33 in both directions to come to and from the site. And 20% of the cars would be to and from the south along Fairfield Road, most of which would use the Adelphia Road, County Route 524 corridor to then proceed east and west. Once we've established how much traffic we estimate it'll generate, we've established the trip distribution for cars and trucks. We then add that traffic onto the 2023 no build volumes to come up with the 2023 build volumes with this project fully developed and fully operational. If you look at the split of traffic that would emanate from this development, both to the north and to the south along Fairfield Road, during the peak hours, in most instances, in terms of all the turning movements at the various intersections, in any direction, you will only see about one additional trip or less in any direction during the peak hours. Each minute of those peak hours, which I would submit to you is not a significant amount of traffic. And that is certainly borne out by the traffic operations analysis that we have prepared as part of the traffic study. That traffic analysis or operations analysis is based on the Highway Capacity Manual, which is published by the Transportation Research Board. And that methodology is what all traffic engineers use to assess and identify traffic operations. We analyze the Fairfield Road intersections with Park Avenue, which is signalized, the Route 33 ramps, which are stop controlled, Baker Road, which is stop controlled, Bennett Road, which is stop controlled, and then County Route 524, Adelphia Road, which is signalized. And we also looked at the proposed site driveways, both of which are full movement as well as stop controlled. all the intersections that we analyzed operate efficiently with moderate to low delays, with the exception of the southbound left turn movement from Fairfield Road onto Adelphia Road, County Route 524, during the weekday evening peak hour. And it's clear, you can see this in terms of the travel patterns. People come along Route 33 by and large, they get onto Fairfield Road in the evening, they come down Fairfield Road past the site, down to the 524 corridor, and a lot of people are making a left turn at that intersection. So we did identify that movement as having substantial delay, but the amount of traffic that we add to that movement during the weekday evening peak hour will all be cars, and they amount to, on average, 1 additional car every 4 minutes to that southbound left turn movement. We did identify some timing changes that could be implemented to improve operations at that intersection. And obviously that would be subject to the county making those changes. You heard earlier that we do have county site plan approval, and the county has not required any timing changes to be made by this applicant, but they are aware of what we identified in our study, and that our study was part of the site plan review by the county. Our analysis also shows that the proposed site driveways, again, there are 2 driveways for this site along Fairfield Road, will operate efficiently with very little to moderate delays for turning movements, both coming in and out of the driveways, and they will operate efficiently, acceptably, and safely. We have worked with Tung To, the site engineer you heard from earlier, to evolve the driveway design in response to some of your board professionals' comments regarding the driveways along Fairfield Road. That design evolution has resulted in driveways that can accommodate trucks both turning into and out of those driveways simultaneously, so that the trucks will not encroach on each other's turning paths as they come in or out of those driveways simultaneously. You heard earlier that the fire official has reviewed their plans and they're acceptable to him. In terms of parking, our parking complies with the ordinance requirement, and I do believe the parking is sufficient for the demands that you would anticipate, or that I would anticipate with the types of buildings that are proposed, given their limited operations. The site design itself provides efficient circulation on the site interior. I don't see any areas of concern with respect to the internal site design. And if, Paul, if you could call up the site plan, please.
Dan, I have to interrupt. This has been going on for like over an hour now. What, can we just get to the point, please? Like, just get to the point. You've been droning on for an hour. Like, can we just get to the point?
All right, hold on.
Please.
It's their, I understand, but it's their application.
I get that, but I mean, ugh.
They get to make the record that they wish to make here.
Though we submitted a report, we got to rely on the testimony of it. It's a lengthy report. He provided a lot of analysis as to the amount of traffic generated, the impacts to the intersections, and now going into the internal circulation. I think it's well within his purview to be thorough as he
I
can
get
be.
it, but we listened to Mansfield and all the other stuff that was droning on and on and on. So like, I understand it.
Mr. Chairman, I understand all this, but they get to make the record that they want.
And with all due respect, Jen, I'm almost done.
No, you don't need to respond. Look,
No,
you're
certainly.
going to listen to me now.
Okay.
I'm trying to say that you can testify and make the record that you want. You know, going back and forth is not going to help you finish this testimony. So put on the record what you think you need to get on the record, and we'll move on.
And thank you for that, Ron, and with all due respect to the board as well as Jen, I'm almost finished. That's all I was gonna say. And actually, I lost my train of thought, but if you could pan over to the right, please, Paul. We might have to put the overall site plan up.
And maybe A58.
Yes. So there were two areas on the site plan on the site interior that your professionals had raised in terms of concerns. One area was on the northeast side of the small building along that curve in that circulation road. That circulation road is 30-foot wide. If two tractor trailers are driving along that turn in opposite directions, there is some overlap with their movements. We do recognize that as being a concern. I can tell you respectfully, that's a typical design for warehouse developments. Truck drivers do understand when they're making these types of turns. There's clear sight lines. It's low speed. Typically, a truck driver, if they're coming in opposite directions, one will stop and allow the other one to pass clearly, and then proceed with their specific turn. Pan down to the bottom, please. There was a similar concern raised down at the southeast corner of the bigger building with that curve. And what we would submit to the professionals as well as the board, if this is a concern, what we would suggest is to address that concern is we would make the circulation around these curves one way. And one way in the direction that is preferred for truckers to circulate when they're accessing truck docks. And finally, you heard from the site engineer that the applicant is proposing to widen Fairfield Road. Essentially, they're going to mirror what is being done for the rock solid application, so that in the end, in both directions along Fairfield Road, you'll have a 12-foot travel lane with a 10-foot shoulder. And in my opinion, that road cross section, the combination of what's being done for this application as well as what's under construction with the rock solid application, will provide a road frontage that will easily accommodate not only the additional traffic from this development, but the other traffic that already exists along Fairfield Road, and any vehicles waiting to make a left turn into our driveways, if they were coming from the north. Anyone that's behind them proceeding south will have an area to bypass any vehicles waiting to turn left into our site. So with that, I believe the site driveways as proposed will operate safely and efficiently and can accommodate movements both into and out of the site. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Could you discuss the level of service of the driveways turning into and out of for the trucks, please?
Certainly. For both driveways, the levels of service for turning movements coming out of each driveway will be the levels of service B, with delays ranging from 11.1 seconds per vehicle to 13.5 seconds per vehicle, depending on what peak hour you are looking at.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Mr. Desario, first I want to compliment you. You did something that a lot of traffic engineers don't do. You gave an estimation of which way you think the traffic is going to go. I think that was important considering Route 33 is right up the road here, and the Delphi School is the other direction. 80/20 is certainly a nice thing to hear. Now, I haven't heard exactly yet what are the kinds of vehicles that are going to be going in and out of here. Are they going to be all semis, or will there be box trucks included? Do you know that, sir?
We assumed, for purposes of analysis, all tractor trailers, semis. Practically speaking, if you get multiple tenants occupying these buildings, you could see less tractor trailers, less semis, and more box trucks, single unit trucks.
Okay. I know you said something about 800 vehicles a day, but you were quite adamant that that number you thought would be higher than what it is. When you looked at the directions of the trucks, did you take anything into account other roads like Bennett Road, if trucks went in those directions?
Not specifically, but I can tell you based on the analysis, if trucks were to use, say, let's say Bennett, which I fully don't anticipate or expect, but the intersection of Bennett and Fairfield works very efficiently and could accommodate additional trucks. But practically speaking, I fully expect all the trucks associated with this property, particularly tractor trailers and semis, to be relegated to the 33 corridor.
Yeah, I just brought that up because we have another case going on now that Bennett Road leads to roads that are weight restricted. So, but that's, and this is a 24/7 operation? Or we don't know yet?
It'll be tenant specific, but yes, we are applying for 24-hour operation.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Stan, very informative. You brought me back to my days sitting in Hickman Hall at Rutgers University there. So I guess a couple questions for you. Is there any restrictions of tractor trailers? I asked this to Tung before, and I guess you're the man to answer this. Restrictions of tractor trailers making a left or right onto Fairfield out of the facility. And I guess my question, follow-up to that is, I understand there's going to be road improvements in front of the subject property. Are those being done because one of the reasons being a tractor trailer couldn't safely make an exit onto Fairfield without coming into oncoming traffic? In other words, going in the other lane to safely get into his lane?
Let me start with the second question first. You can always design a driveway, can always be made wide enough with large enough radii so that you can keep, say, a truck on its own side of the center lines, both coming in and out. So the fact that Fairfield Road and its existing width is what it is today, you could always design a driveway to keep a truck on its own side of the road or the driveway when making turns into and out of any site. I think the widening along Fairfield Road was being done by this applicant because it makes sense to do the widening. It's a better situation with the widening. And I think the county also was requiring that widening to be done. In terms of any turning prohibitions at the two proposed driveways, we are seeking no prohibition right now. The county in its review did not implement any prohibitions on either the driveways either. You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Shoot.
Is there going to be signage installed saying no left turns for trucks?
The current site plan doesn't have that kind of signage. Again, we're not seeking any prohibitions in terms of turning movements. I will submit to you if the board feels that's appropriate. I could discuss it with the applicant and he could inform you whether that is something they would be acceptable of.
Dan, if I could ask you a question, you're reflecting a lot about county along Fairfield Road and their comments at the driveway, but isn't that a municipal road?
I believe it is.
So the county opined on movements on the municipal street?
I might have misspoke, Laura.
Okay, so then I'm just trying to understand whose direction was it to allow the full movement?
Well, wait, are you talking about the improvements that are proposed?
You had said that the county reviewed these improvements and the movements. I'm just trying to understand, you know, what level the county, I don't think it's a county road.
It's not. It's
Okay,
not.
so then
It's not.
that you were.
I misspoke. I meant to say the municipal review, your review. But regardless if it's something the town wants or not, it's part of the application, and the applicant's proposing to widen the road to mirror what was done for the rock solid application. In terms of the turning prohibitions, we're not seeking any. If the board wants to discuss prohibitions at the driveways, particularly for trucks, I think the applicant would entertain that discussion.
I mean, I would ask the professionals. Laura, what do you think about signage at the front?
I just don't know why we would want trucks to make a right. We would want them to go to 33. We don't want them to head towards the local roads. I know that there's weight restrictions as we near those roads. So it would be my recommendation that we force the trucks to head towards 33.
Right.
That would mean signage for the planning board to approve.
Yes. And I think the applicant's amenable to such signage if the board would like that. And frankly speaking, I think it reinforces what we believe to be the case, that trucks are going to be relegated to the Route 33 corridor. So the applicant would be completely amenable to any such signage.
So then, Mr. Chair, the board can make its decision whether it wants it. If it does, that'll be a condition of approval.
Right.
I guess just to be clear, Mr. DeSario, you're referring to tractor trailers?
Yes. There would be turning restrictions for trucks coming out of the site to make right turns only onto Fairfield Road to head north towards the Route 33 corridor.
But I guess when you mentioned earlier, there's a potential, especially if there's more tenants, to have smaller trucks or box trucks. I just want to be clear as to what, trucks is a general term. Are we just referring to tractor trailers or something beyond?
I would respectfully submit to the board, it should be a tractor trailer restriction, but I would defer to the board and its professionals for guidance.
Mr. Chairman, I would have no issue limiting that to tractor trailers.
So just a right turn only for tractor trailers.
Tractor trailers. And the other thing I just wanted to make sure gets touched upon, because I'm unclear as to how it works, is if that one drive went to one way. And I think the board needs to look at that. Currently, it's two-way. I think Mr. DeSario testified that he can make that one way in response to our comment, which is that two trucks cannot pass each other at that point. So in a way to address it, they were going to do one-way circulation. And I'm just not sure if we do one way and that would only permit the trucks in that way, how a truck may get to the other building. So I just want to see that and how it may impact the site plan so that the board can make an informed decision.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Ms. Newman. That was one of my questions as well. I didn't see, what if the truck gets to a point where they say, oh, I can't go any further. It didn't look like there was any turnaround.
And
the site.
Laura, we'd be happy to work with you. If you would allow me just a minute, I probably can clarify at least my thoughts, just so the board understands what we're thinking, if that's okay.
Yes.
So Paul, if you could zoom in, please, to the bottom portion of the site plan. Perfect. So the southerly driveway along Fairfield Road would stay two-way. A truck that would come in, or any vehicle, but particularly trucks that would come in that southerly driveway would go past the car parking lot. And at that point, once you're east of the car parking lot, we would change that to one way. So that any truck that would come in off of Fairfield Road could pass where the parking lot driveway is. Once they get to that southwest corner of the building, that would be one way heading east towards the truck court. Any truck that's in the truck court for the big building would have to proceed to the north and exit out of the site at the northerly driveway. Similarly, for the small building, the northerly driveway would continue to be two-way. Just pan to the left, please, a little bit. Thank you. So both cars and trucks, they could come off Fairfield Road at the northerly driveway. They proceed in the easterly direction. That's all two-way circulation. We would put signage that would direct all trucks for the small building to make the right turn where it's being indicated on the exhibit right now. And then if you continue to pan all the way to the right, please. The circulation aisle on the north side of the building would continue to be two-way so people can get to the car parking. That's on the east side of the building. But trucks in the truck court, if they were gonna, I don't know why they would, but if they wanted to come around that side, we would have that circulation aisle just be one way heading back out of the site.
Newman, I think he's just looking, I think we're just looking for trouble. You're relying on signage too much. I mean, these aren't small vehicles, you know, and if they make a wrong turn or make a boo-boo, you know, this is a big problem. And if trucks have to start backing up because one hits the turn point where the other one's coming in, and one's going to have to back up, and God knows how they back up or what they back up into. It's just, it sounds silly to me. Am I wrong?
Well, I just want to be clear in what it is that we look at in terms of the planning board. Our role is how do they get in and out of this site? You know, is the ingress and egress safe? General traffic in the area is beyond what the law
I'm
allows.
talking about how they're circulating around the building. This is what we're talking about. That is our purview, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah, we're just talking about the circulation around the building. There's a pinch point. There's two pinch points in the lower part of warehouse A and on the right side of warehouse B that Ms. Newman pointed out. And two trucks can't pass if they hit the apex or of that turn at the same time. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay. And so we're trying to solve the problem by hoping that trucks wait, or adding signage turned into a one-way street. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to use the term, but I just think it's silly.
So staying with the small building that we're looking at, any truck that comes into the site that wants to get to the small building, they are going to want to turn at that first circulation aisle, and we'll have signage to that effect. And the reason why they want to turn there is that it positions them in the right direction and correctly for them to then back into a loading dock. So truck drivers are going to naturally gravitate to access the truck court in that exact fashion because it allows them to back up. They can look out their driver's side window as they're backing up to a particular loading dock.
So I have a question real quick.
Mhm.
You have a truck that comes in on the south entrance. Okay. He wants to go to warehouse B. He makes the wrong turn in there. He goes north, right, along that driveway, then has to make a hard right to go right again back around to get to warehouse B. Or does he have
Yes.
to go back out to the Fairfield to do what? How's he gonna make that turn?
If a truck's destined to warehouse B and he goes in the southerly driveway, you are correct. He would have to drive through the truck court or warehouse A and then make that right turn in order to get over to warehouse B.
Well, how's he gonna make that right turn
Make
to
that
make
turn.
another right turn to get into where you want to do the counterclockwise? You know what I mean? To get in there. How's he gonna make that turn?
That turn they can't make. That's why trucks that are associated with warehouse B are going to turn in the northerly driveway.
But who's gonna make sure of that? How do these guys know what warehouse they're going to?
I think the tenants that occupy these buildings will instruct their drivers, you need to turn in this driveway to get to our building.
Mr. Chairman, we seem to hear that a lot. I mean, how much more, or maybe it's a better question for Ron. Hey, Ron, I mean, I know that the applicant has their ability to put their testimony on there, but I mean, I guess they say what they say and we have to take our wait for that? Is that the best way to handle it?
You have to listen to what they say, listen to your professional's evaluation of their testimony, listen to the public. And, based upon what our jurisdiction is, make your decision.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So just to summarize, we can address the two pinch points by creating one-way circulation in those areas of concern. And we can do it with appropriate signage and striping. And again, these are low-speed operations on site interior. And I can tell you that the way these buildings are laid out, they are pretty much standard layouts and typical designs.
This is a two-phase project, so wouldn't it make more sense to worry about the first phase signage and ingress and egress, and then maybe number two never even gets built? Why even worry about that now? Why not down the road when you do build phase two?
Joe,
Then you change the signage.
Joe, as a board member, I want to see the whole application, nothing but the application.
Yeah, because I don't see how you can do a one-way and make it work. It just doesn't make any sense.
I'm taking the recommendation, Mr. Greenfield, that Mr. Cuchero gave us, and they put their testimony on there, and I will use that accordingly to weigh my decision.
And if I may, I believe Jeremy Lang, who testified earlier and as to the operations, maybe and talked about kind of the route these drivers will take, may be able to address some of those comments if you allow them to come up.
I think Mr. Greenfield probably feels the same that I do. You can put whatever you want on the testimony. I'm happy to listen to it, but I'm going to weigh it accordingly, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and we're just asking that you listen to the testimony. Mr. Lang?
Thank you. So just to reinforce what Dan just said, if a truck were to come in the southerly driveway that's actually intended to go to B, and we believe this would be a rare event, but it could happen. It's absolutely a possibility that a truck could be confused or for whatever reason go in the wrong driveway. This intersection where you exit the building A truck court, right where the hand is at now here, that intersection, because this is the truck court, this is extremely wide. The throat of that, so the narrowest part of that, it's like 70 feet wide, and the actual opening at the curb radius is much larger. So in the event that a truck is errant, this is not regular operation, but somebody's lost, makes the right turn, you can come out wide in that area and make that right turn. It's not that it's impossible to make. The turn can be made, and you can go all the way around and into the correct driveway on B. That movement can be made. It's not the movement.
Jeremy,
But
Jeremy,
it's
does your
not
truck
that the truck would
circulation
have to
plan show
back
that?
up or it would be impossible, to make that movement.
Jeremy, but your truck circulation plan doesn't show that.
Sorry, I think Laura's talking. I can't hear her. I don't know if it's my end or.
Your truck circulation plan, does it show that movement?
I
It does
can hear
not.
you. So
No,
fine.
no, I can hear you now. I think I had an issue with my speaker. I apologize for that. But no, Laura, to answer your question, it does not. I'd be happy to submit an exhibit that shows that though.
And it doesn't interfere with trucks that could be leaving from building B.
No, it probably will cross the center line, but this is a stop condition here. So, and there's plenty of line of sight here. So the truck would wait till there was and again, this has been testified, there's not really not that much traffic here. So it'd be really rare for two trucks to meet at the same time. But even if they did, he's simply waiting at the stop sign for the other truck to clear. And again, this is an emergent situation where somebody has gone in the wrong driveway. My point is that the cure here, if they go in the wrong driveway, is not that they have to back up. They're simply going to come up to this intersection and they're going to, if there is another vehicle that's oncoming, they're going to stop. Once that vehicle clears, then they're going to make the movement.
Any other questions of Mr. Lang or Mr. Desario as to the circulation, internal circulation? So I guess, again, Jeremy, just to summarize, it's anticipated the trucks, which will most likely, or the tractor trailers, most likely coming south on Fairfield Road. You know, the first entrance is going to be the entrance used for the smaller warehouse in the back, so they can come in and make that right. As you mentioned, they want to go in that counterclockwise pattern, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the trucks always want to go in the counterclockwise pattern. It is much more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's much more difficult to back up the other way because you cannot look out the window and see the building. You're completely blind as to the building you're backing into if you do it the wrong way. So whether the signage or not, the trucks are going to go in this counterclockwise circulation. That is just part of the DNA of a truck driver in a semi truck. So I'm.
And to that point, then also for the front warehouse, those tractor trailers are going to come down Fairfield Road, but come to the second entrance so it can make that pattern. So when it coming in the one way, there, even under normal operations, there would be no reason for a truck to be coming in that opposite direction, but we're agreeing to make it a one way. So to ensure it doesn't happen.
It's just belt and suspenders to make it one way, but the natural operation is already one way because it's going to go in a counterclockwise flow. So it really is already one way, but we can just belt and suspenders sign it that way, even though that's already the natural traffic pattern.
For a driver that knows where he's going, I would agree that it would be one way, that it would be natural to do that. But unless this guy's driving here every day and knows this layout, he's not going to know that.
I'm not following you, Mr. Greenfield.
Well, you're saying that the truck is going to follow that path naturally to go counterclockwise, right?
Right.
Without signage.
Because he's going to see the building. So when a driver comes down,
right, but this driver's never been to this building. So unless this driver goes to this building every single day, he's not going to know where he's going, is he?
What I mean, let me attempt to clarify. So as he's coming south on Fairfield, even as his very first time, he's never been here before. If warehouse A is his destination, he's going to want to drive past it and use the southerly driveway because he's going to know that's the counterclockwise rotation. Because you're going to look at the building, it's going to be clear that the loading docks are in the back. He's going to do the counterclockwise.
So are you going to have like a big A on the end of the building or a big B that these guys can see? Like, I don't.
We can. I mean, the code requires the buildings to have numbers. So the fire, I think it's the fire code. So they will have a number on it. It'll have an address. It'll be, 100 Fairfield. I don't know what the actual number will be, but it'll be something. And that's required to be on the building. So there's going to be a number on the building. And you know, we would have signage to back this up. But if they know their destination, their ticket, right, and their truck says, you know, 100 Fairfield, they see the 100 on the building, they're going to know that's their building, and they're going to know to circulate around that way. Even if they didn't, let's just stay on building A for a minute. So let's say the guy's, you know, completely confused and he goes in, you know, the wrong way, goes in the north driveway, he can still make the turn. He can still get into the truck court. And it, like I said, they don't like to do it, but it is possible for them to back up the other way, even if it takes them a couple extra movements. You know, it's not that it's an unrecoverable situation. It's just not as easy as going the other way. So even if he goes for building A the wrong way, there's still a solution that doesn't involve him having to re-leave the site, or doesn't involve him going the wrong way on the driveway. He'll simply make the maneuvers necessary in the truck court, which is what it's, of course, designed for.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so I just, you know, it's 10 o'clock, so I just wanted to just remind you and the board that I do need an executive tonight.
Yeah.
So we need some time for that. And if Jeremy is going to put together, or someone from Jeremy's team is going to put together the exhibit he's talking about, you know, they may want to do that and have Laura and CME evaluate it so that, you know, the board can have some of its own professional testimony on that.
Yeah. Okay.
But, you know, up to the board as to how it wants to proceed tonight.
Well, what time are we at now?
Well, I would
We're
like
at
to-
10:05.
if you're gonna put that together real quick, I would like our professionals, when they're having their conversation, determine if this new movement changes any of the traffic testimony and how traffic will be entering and queuing inside queuing up inside this circulation when they present
Yeah,
that
because I
plan.
mean, I don't think Mr. Greenfield's not talking about building A. We're not worried about building A as far as the circulation. We're talking about building B. That's the biggest concern. If he passes that first driveway and, you know, and that's the movement we're talking about. We're not concerned with the first building. The first building, you're right, no matter what, the truck will be able to get around it. It's getting to that back building.
And
So,
you're pushing all the trucks to go out on one side, so now they're not using two different driveways, so the traffic pattern changes. It changes the whole dynamics of the site.
Well, well, that part's not exactly accurate. All the trucks are exiting on the north driveway. That is always the plan.
Whatever the case may be,
set up.
I'm just trying to give you the last 2 minutes before we got to cut off. And
Sure.
to make sure you're properly prepared for the next time that we meet. That's all.
Outstanding. I appreciate that guidance, and we'll definitely take you up on the offer. We'll certainly prepare for those exhibits, and with the board's permission, we'd be happy to work with Laura's office and to go through all this and you know, attempt to get something that everybody's comfortable with.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I know our next two meetings have this applicant's other applications on.
Right.
So Eileen, what's the first meeting after that we can bring them back for this? I guess the second meeting in March?
March 16th.
Okay. Mr. Giovanni, is that, you want to take a second just to talk to your guys and see if that's okay?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that meeting to be virtual as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good then.
You good for the
Okay,
16th?
so then
For the 16th, yep.
let me just make the announcement then.
And Mr. Giannetti, I need an extension of time as well.
Yes, we can provide, I can shoot you an email confirming it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so the case of AAFRHW Property LLC, case number SP-1095, is going to be carried to the board's March, you said 18th, Eileen, or 16th? I'm sorry,
16th.
16th. March 16th, 2023 meeting, which will begin at 7 o'clock. It will be a virtual meeting. The instructions on how to access the virtual meeting will be available on the township's website. All documents associated with the application are available on the township's website and also physically at Town Hall for inspection, review, and any copying. There will be no further notice required for property owners or other interested parties. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, good night.
Now,
care.
Mr.
Right.
Chair, Eileen has the resolution to go into executive, so when
Right,
she's
really
ready,
quick.
she can read that.
Can we just adjourn from executive? We don't need to
Well,
come
that,
back.
yeah, that'll be part of the resolution.
Okay.
That we're going to adjourn from
All right,
executive.
perfect.
So I just need a motion to go into exec.
Can I get a motion, guys?
I'll
Make
make
a motion.
motion.
to executive.
I need a second.
Second,
Mr. Cristiano,
Yes.
Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Husser,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
yes.
Ms. Talente,
Yes.
Mr. Tannenhouse,
Yes.
Councilman Gager,
Yes.
Mr. Mercer,
Yes.
and Chairman Bavai.
Yes.
Okay, I'll read the resolution. Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes requires that the public shall not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. And whereas the Planning Board of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12, namely litigation, Whispering Woods hearing, case SP 1085, AAFFHW Property LLC. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of the meeting and that the Planning Board will not reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that the minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session and the time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time. And then I just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Real
adjourn.
quick, if I have to recuse from Whispering Woods, should I enter?
Yes, you need to recuse from the executive session as well.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody, Eileen
night.
sent the link in the email, so you just gotta go to that link, guys.
Okay.
All right.
We got the motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right,
All in
fantastic.
favor?
Aye.
Thank,
Aye.
Okay.
thank you.